Blaring Out Show.
This is the Blaring Out with Eric Blair show, and today I'm pleased to have Mike Levine of Triumph on the show. How you doing today, Mike?
Great, Eric. How are you doing?
Good. Now, you've been up in LA promoting the new DVD live at the US Festival.
Yeah.
How's that been going for you?
Oh, it's been going great. You know, I've actually been all around the country. It's just amazing being out on the road again after this amount of time and doing TV shows and radio and interviews with the press and stuff. So it's been really a hoot and a half.
What's the response that you're getting from people?
You know, excellent. I mean, as far as just, you know, the Triumph fans, they're just loving it. And you know, from the technical world, which really impresses me, the DVD, they love it. I mean, you know, they're putting it on a par from a quality point of view with the Zeppelin package.
Yeah.
You know, it's 5.1. It sounds great. The audio is spectacular. The picture, considering everything's 20 years old, it got really nicely put together.
They probably shot it on original beta.
You know what? I don't know what it was originally shot on.
Because it's so crystal clear. It is beyond reality.
Well, I mean, they spent a lot of time in our place in the studio. You know, digitizing it and redigitizing it and just bringing everything out and finding where the dull spots were and bringing them up. And it got to the point, it had been done so many times, it started to lose quality. So they started all over again.
Really?
Yeah, it was amazing. I mean, it took a year and a half to put this together, on and off.
Now this is the first time this has been released, or was it released?
It was released on VHS 86, 87 for MCA Home Video put it out, but it was the only rock thing they had, so it just got buried in a package with some movies. I think maybe, you know, they shipped 1,000, they sold 1,000, and then that was it. It was gone.
But the original VHS did not include the documentary in it.
No, it had, and certainly the audio was, you know, nowhere near the quality, and even the picture's not nearly as good.
Were there any overdubs done on this? On the US Festival
you know what? I think they might have been way back when. I mean, my memory from those days, I have some bad brain cells apparently. So we may have fixed something here or there because, you know, when we did the show, we weren't using our own gear. So a lot of stuff was rented because we had to fly. We were in Florida the day before playing with ZZ Top.
Yeah.
So it was, you know, Gil had a rented set of drums. You know, their Yamaha supplied them or whatever, but he had never played on them before. No sound check, no nothing. Walk on stage, here you are, 500,000 people, go play on stuff that you're not familiar with. So there might have been a fix-up or two back then, but not much. I mean.
Well, I'll tell you something, man. I love it.
Yeah.
I think it's great.
I'm glad you like
so
it.
Vivid, and it really brings back the whole feeling of what it was like to be there at the US Festival.
Yeah, all the ancillary, it's not just Triumph playing,
yeah.
You know, there's a lot of fun stuff. I mean, some really bad dancing on there, isn't there?
You know what? There's a lot of beautiful women on there too.
That's for sure.
Yeah, and that's the good thing, you know. You always got to it's always got to be, you know, throw those beautiful women into the rock and roll arena, and then you got it happening.
Yeah.
You know?
I like the sheriff. He's my favorite character.
He's real exciting,
isn't he? Big day for him.
How did Triumph form?
Triumph was just an idea Gil and I had. It was we were pals and we were playing in a quote-unquote part-time band. I was producing and writing jingles for a living at that point in my life, and Gil had this little pickup band, and he was in between bass players, so he called me up and said, you know, can you fill in for me for a couple of weeks? And I said, no, I can't. I don't do that anymore. And he said, come on, you have to. I can't find anybody for 2 weeks. I know you're not playing, but you know, so he finally conned me into it. And so 2 weeks turned into 2 months. The new bass player that he was going to get didn't show up or whatever the reason was. So in the 2 months turned into 6 months, and I'm going like, I can't do this anymore, Gil, you know. But I got the bug to play again, you know, and it was kind of cool. It was fun. And so I said, why don't we start a real band? So we sat down and got high and just said, what would be the perfect band to have? You know, well, 3-piece band, because there's not many guys. Big show, you know, Zeppelin style, you know, hard rock, heavy rock, whatever it was. I mean, that's what our dream was. And I had some friends in the record business because I had a label in a previous incarnation. So I went, one guy that used to work for Warner Brothers up there him and another guy started this label called Attic Records. So I went to him, I said, I'm going to start a band, but I need some money. They said, fine, how much do you need? I said, 10 grand, you know, just to get going. They said, sure.
Wow, they must have really believed in you.
Well, you know, I wasn't a dummy. And again, you know, they knew me really well. I mean, we were friends, and they knew that I followed through on whatever it was that I said. Now, it was a little bit of a crapshoot for them, of course. But we needed a guitar player, so somebody recommended we go check out this guy, Rick Emmett, who was playing in a band that was kind of a prog rock band. You know, they were doing Gentle Giant and Yes stuff. So we went to see him play, and you know, I was knocked out, and Gil's going, I don't like him. And I said, well, why? He says, I don't think he can play Whole Lot of Love, you know. I said, anybody who can play that stuff can play Whole Lot of Love. Don't worry about that, Gil. So we got together and jammed, we talked with him, you know, showed him we had a record deal, and we were ready to go, and so he deserted his partners and came with us.
What was the Canadian hard rock scene like in '75 when you guys first got together?
It wasn't that good, you know. Getting a record deal in Canada was almost impossible. You know, Rush was just starting to break in America, I think, at that point. And but there was really no other real hard rock bands, at least that I remember at that point in time. So that was, I guess, a good thing. So we got a reputation as being this bombastic band with more lights and pyro and stuff like that, you know, playing in high schools and clubs. And so we made a record really quickly into our career, but we did a lot of things that we did right, you know, from a musical and marketing point of view, because it all goes together. You know, you just because you have good music doesn't mean you're going to be successful. Yeah,
I know one of the things that Triumph is really known for is your positive image and positive message. And where does that come from? Is that a personal thing on your part?
It was never conscious. It's just, you know, every time you go in the studio, it's a snapshot of a certain period of time of your creative life. And so, you know, Rick liked to write the positive kind of poppy kind of things, and Gil was really the hard rocker, and me, I just had to keep the balance. You know? Just try and keep everybody happy and together. So anyway, to answer your question, yeah, we were because that's what the kind of guys we were. We were positive guys. We laughed, man. We had the best of times. You know, it was like the Three Musketeers going out there, all for one, one for all.
Your vision for the band at that time?
Oh, geez, all I wanted to have was a gold record in Canada, you know, and then it looked like we were getting close. So I said, oh, I guess we better go for platinum. And then, well, we better go for gold in America. Oh, we better go for platinum in America. You know, so every time we got close to a goal, we just moved the bar up a little higher, as opposed to, wow, we just did what we set out to do, which was never really the be-all and end-all, you know.
Now, was there any ever question in your mind, or Gil or Rick, that, hey, we're not going to stay a trio, we're going to add another musician in on this?
We thought about it, especially when we started adding keyboards. And, you know, I was getting kind of where I was nailed to one spot on stage a lot of the time. So I guess really late, I can't remember whether it was Thunder 7 Tour or it was just Sport of Kings, but Rick Santers, who's a guy from Toronto, had a band called Santers, great guitar player, great singer, great keyboard player. Mm-hmm. We went to him and said, you know, you want to come out with us and be kind of the fourth guy? And he said, sure, I'd love to. So that was, I don't know if he did 2 tours or just the one. Again, that's the memory thing, but it was great having him because he added so much, you know, to what we were doing on stage. And it was, and plus he's a great guy, so he just fit right in. It was all very, very cool.
Originally, when the first Triumph album came out, and then Rock and Roll Machine, apparently Texas really took to you guys. Yeah. And why do you feel that they responded so favorably to your sound at that time?
Well, when the first album came out, there was this little station in San Antonio called, it was called KISS FM, and I can't remember the AM signal, but it was simulcast AM and FM, noon to 5 o'clock heavy metal. And before and after that, all religious, both FM and AM. But the guys that ran that had that 5-hour window, Joe Anthony and Lou Roney, they were hard rock freaks, you know, and not young guys. I guess they were young then, but you know, older than your average rock fan. Like, you know, Joe owned a restaurant, an Italian restaurant, and Lou was a sales guy. But they played everything. I mean, it was the only hard rock station, I think, in North America, actually. You know, for that 5 hours, man, it just crunched. So a song on their first album was called The Blinding Light Show. And they started playing it, and the phones lit up, so they played it twice a day, every day for a year. And we started, the little company in Canada was exporting records into the States, and we sold, I don't know, 10 or 15,000 just in San Antonio.
That's great.
We became stars there. So those guys really made us, and all the record companies got interested because they paid attention to that station.
Yeah.
Because all they played was Triumph, Corpse, and Judas Priest, and Rush, and all bands that you'd never hear on the radio back in '76.
Wow. You end up doing a tour of Texas to support the Rock and Roll Machine album.
Yeah.
What were the highlights of that for you?
Well, even before we did that tour, we just went in. They called us and said, would you play this club called Randy's Rodeo? And we said, no, we won't, because going all that way for one show was crazy. Then they said, well, would you headline San Antonio Municipal Auditorium, which was 6,800 seats. Now, we're still playing clubs in high schools in Toronto. So we said, well, yeah. And the support was the Runaways, Joan Jett and Sherry Carey and them. And,
right on.
And Yesterday and Today, Y&T. So the show went on sale, sold out. And we're freaking, right? Because now we got a sold out show. We've never played on a big stage before.
Yeah.
We're going, well, this is going to be the true test. So we played this 2,000 seat club in Buffalo the night before, and then flew it, or 2 days before, and then flew whatever gear we could bring down on an airplane into San Antonio, and set up in this big proscenium stage. Man, it was huge, and our little chintzy gear really didn't fill it up very good. But anyway, the place just went crazy, went absolutely. I mean, we were flabbergasted. How great the crowd was. I mean, I could actually see the balcony moving. The audience was rocking so hard. Either that, or I was so incredibly high on life at that point.
Yeah.
I'm not sure. But it was really a cool experience. I mean, it proved to us as players and as a band that we could handle a big stage and a big audience. So that was an incredible turning point in our career, I think.
How did the deal with RCA come about?
After we'd done the Rock and Roll Machine album in Canada, that record went platinum in a hurry in Canada, and we had done a big tour, and which was really our first big tour of Canada, playing small buildings and stuff in some arenas. So we're supposed to play a show at Massey Hall, which is a 2,700 seat theater in Toronto, and it's like where everybody played. My dad was in the symphony; that was the home of the Toronto Symphony, and every musician's dream is to play that venue. So we put the show up on sale. We didn't stop playing anything anywhere within 200 miles of Toronto for like months, like 3 or 4 months before that. And the show goes up on sale, sells out. But 2 weeks before the show, get a call from the promoter saying, that Massey Hall just called, says you can't use pyro in there. We said, oh, really? Like everywhere we've gone, the smallest club on the Strip in Toronto, people came for that.
Yeah.
So there's no way we're going to do a lesser show than our fans are used to seeing, especially in our first concert environment in our hometown. So we went through this whole to-do with the promoter and our managers at that point, and said, finally Gil and I just decided that's it, we're not going to play. We're going to move the show to Maple Leaf Gardens. Promoter goes crazy. He's going, you got a sold out show, everybody's going to make money, blah, blah, blah. And we said, no, we're going to do it. He says, well, I won't pay you. I'll play you, but I won't pay you.
Yeah.
So we cut this deal, I don't know, it was 95.5 or something like that, where we ended up with all the money sold out. So he was pissed off because, he obviously didn't make as much dough as he wanted, but we had all the record labels there. And the fans went crazy. After the show, they're all saying, they're talking to the attorneys and they're offering this and that, and it's like blah, blah, blah. Got butchered in the morning paper, like just the worst review you'd ever want to read on any act. So all these A&R guys are flying home on the morning plane, and that's what they distributed on the airplane. They read it, and everybody passed. Guy from RCA slept in. He took an afternoon plane, got the later day the other paper, and there was a glowing review in there. So he was the only bidder. He didn't know it.
It's amazing how life is like that.
I know. Well, it's amazing anybody pay attention to a review in a newspaper anyway.
You can't trust them.
Who cares what they say?
Yeah.
It doesn't, as long as they spell your name right and put a picture in there, that's all that matters.
Yeah, exactly. Any press is good press, they say.
That's what I always said.
Tell me some of the highlights of the Just a Game period. Now, that album went top 40 for you guys.
Yeah.
And Lay It on the Line was a big hit.
And Hold On.
Hold On, yeah.
Well, Hold On was the first, top 40, I think it went to number 38 or something like that. Which, I didn't really care about. I cared about album radio. I didn't care about top 40 at all. Album radio, I knew was going to be our bread and butter, And they embraced the band, and Lay It on the Line was really the song that busted it wide open at album radio. It did a little bit top 40, but not much. But an album radio became an anthem, and that's really, that really kind of wrapped America around Triumph, and Triumph wrapped itself around America with that album, and particularly that song.
Back in those days, it was a unique specialty to be a Canadian group.
Yeah.
Did you feel that at all when you were touring the States?
Sure. I mean, we didn't put a Canadian flag on,
Yeah.
on the stage or anything, but everybody knew we were from Canada, and that old comparison, Triumph and Rush. I mean, there wasn't. They picked the number 3-piece bands that were successful. Not many.
Yeah.
And I think somebody just said one hand you can name them. And so Rush was there, and had cut a lot of the swath of trees out of the way for everybody coming out of Canada. But for us, it was really easy to follow in their wake. So they compared, 3-piece band from Toronto, hard rock, a nice show, blah, blah, blah. High voices. There's all these comparisons all the time.
The great highlights of that Just a Game period for you.
First off, getting a gatefold record. Getting a fold out. I mean, that's like, you only got that if you were a superstar in those days.
Led Zeppelin.
Yeah, somebody big, and you never got it on your second record in America. You never. So I fought with the record label for ages to get that in, and they finally agreed to it. So that was really cool. I mean, that was like, man, you can open it up, and the game was inside, and it was really a cool package. So that was actually a sensational highlight for us. Getting a chart record on Billboard, as a chart single, that was a highlight. Like I said, I didn't really care that much about that, but of course, an album charting on it,
yeah.
The album going gold, and just playing around, playing gigs and having the buildings full. And then as the tour went on, all the houses got bigger,
Yeah.
Like we started the tour playing the Royal Oak Theater in Detroit, and we ended up playing, the end of the tour playing Cobo Hall sold out. So it was just the band growing to that stage and having records and, and the stardom that came with it. I mean, we were all just kind of gaga.
Hit Parader magazine, Circus magazine, all the things you dream about when you're a kid.
Sure, yeah, and you got the stuff in Europe and England and that.
Yeah.
I mean, they were so really behind us. Like from day one, those magazines were behind us, and we never went over there until like 1980, and then we never went back after that.
With the success of Just a Game, how did you guys approach the songwriting process for 1980s Progressions of Power?
We thought we had to toughen the band up a little because the song, Hold On was kind of a power ballad, I guess, for lack of a better. It was actually wasn't even a ballad; it was mid-tempo kind of song. Late on the Line had enough heaviness to it, but the rest of the album, we're still experimenting. We decided consciously, this album's really got to rock. We got to have some really steaming rock songs on it, which we did. I Live for the Weekend, I thought was just a great rocker. I mean, it was a staple at 5 o'clock on Friday afternoons at rock radio. There it comes.
Absolutely.
The weekend starts with Triumph.
Yeah.
So it didn't really sell that well, that album. I don't know why. Maybe it wasn't good. Who knows? I don't know. But it was not. It didn't sell as much as Just a Game. So it kind of, we toured on that, and we did very well. But we realized that, we still got to have that certain. People wanted to hear certain style of music from us, and so we went back to when we went back to write. We said, okay, let's just write the best songs we can. Forget about any conscious decision to do anything. Just let's write. And we had built our own studio. We just built Metalworks, which started off as just going to be a little demo place. And it's part of our kind of warehouse and stuff. And then I was in Jamaica for an extended period of time, and Gil called me. He said, well, Mikey, it's only like another $5,000 to put a 16-track machine in. I said, sure, go ahead.
Yeah.
Right. And then he called me. He says, well, what about if we did this and that? And pretty soon, I came back, and we had a full-blown, 24-track recording studio, and I'm going like, this is amazing.
Saving yourselves money in the end.
Well, that was part of it. I mean, that's for the Allied Forces album, which is the first album we did in that studio. All of a sudden, you're not sitting there going, I got to play because the clock's running,
exactly.
and we're over budget already, and this bass part's costing $180, more than it should. So this one, it allowed us the freedom to just relax and stretch out and rehearse and write the songs in the studio environment, because it really wasn't a public studio. We rented it out. Actually, there was an album done in there before us. We gave them a great deal just to test the gear out and make sure it was all working and that. But we wrote in there, we demoed in there, we did, so it was just great to have that available.
Now, in '81, Allied Forces explodes into the mainstream. Now, how did that type of overall huge success affect you guys, like emotionally and mentally?
Not at all.
Really?
Yeah, it had no effect on us whatsoever. You know, we just, we knew we'd have to, play more shows. We knew we'd have to, have a bigger show. More lights, more pyro, more lasers. I don't know, I guess we didn't have lasers then, but more of everything. It had to be bigger because the album it did explode. I mean, we had 3 or 4 tracks at album radio, all in the top 10. I mean, you couldn't turn on a radio without hearing Triumph for a year, So it was, that was big fun. I mean, we had a panic on that tour. It was just, honest to God, we laughed our way through the whole thing, and except for that 90 minutes we were on stage, and we were deadly serious.
So you guys pretty much floated through that.
Yeah.
It was good.
Yeah, it was just like, so this is the next step. And we were prepared for it, I think, mentally. It's like being a football team, you got to be prepared mentally to go out and play the game. And I think we were ready for it.
In 1983, you released Never Surrender. Then you played the S Festival, 500,000 people. I want to know how that came about and what were some of the highlights of the day for you?
We had heard about this big show that, this geek from Apple Computer was planning, right? And we're going, oh yeah, sure. Who knows if you always hear about big shows.
Yeah.
And their agent's saying, well, it could be a reality, but we don't know. So he's holding dates and, just trying to figure out whether it's going to play or not. And we didn't want to do it because we had played, last time we played the LA area was with Journey at the Rose Bowl. And outdoor show. We need an indoor play in Los Angeles, our next play, right? So the promoter out here, Brian Murphy at Avalon, we planned to do Long Beach Arena, and he figured 3 sellouts for sure.
Yeah.
So the US Festival became a reality. Steve Wozniak we were playing in Phoenix, he flew down to pitch us in person because we didn't want to do it. So we got to know him really well, went out for dinner, and he's a great guy. We just had a wonderful time. He became a good friend. So, but we're still undecided, and it's like, I don't know if you remember these days, but the tickets used to go on sale like at midnight, that kind of stuff.
Sleepover.
Yeah. So the parking lot at Long Beach Arena is full. There's like 10,000 cars all over the highway, and Murphy's out there, and we're trying to we have to make the decision. It's 11:45 on whatever day it was, and we got the agents on the phone, and Woz, and everybody, trying to figure out, oh God, what do we do? So, and our agent at that point said, well, they'll play the show for whatever the money is. However, they want the rights to their footage of the band, too.
Cool.
So that kind of pushed us over the top. We told Murphy, you're going to have to send out everybody home, without Triumph tickets, just tell them the shows have been canceled. And, he was fine with that, although he was not happy.
No.
And we weren't happy either, it was really a tough decision. But, being part of a show of this magnitude, it's like, how do you resist?
Yeah.
It really hurt our career in this area, though. It didn't help.
The thing is that a lot of times, as kids, when you hear about shows being canceled, it makes you think that things are not boding well for the group that you're really supporting.
Well, yeah, but at the same time, everybody, they made the announcement, was on the radio that we're not doing it because of the US Festival, the biggest show ever in Southern California history, and all that. But I think our fans needed to see us inside with the big Triumph show, instead of outside, with just being part of this great big headliner package, which was neat too. But we needed that indoor play. So again, a tough decision. But since we did make that decision, that's the reason this is out.
Exactly.
Right? So I guess in retrospect, it's not so bad.
Now, how do you think Triumph changed the landscape of arena rock?
Well, we won awards, That's Performance Magazine, which is like the Bible of the touring business. We won Innovators of the Year, I think in 1980 even, or 81, I can't remember. I think we just set a standard that was different than most. Everybody just went out on the road, and they really didn't pay much attention to, how they were promoted or how they looked on stage. They just, they went on and bought as many lights that would fit into as many tractor trailers as they decided they were going to take out. And this show designs, either all the lights were on or all the lights were off, that kind of thing. Like we put spotlight operators up above the band and the trusses and stuff. So their ops were right on stage. And nobody else had done that before. And so it was the equivalent of today's Very Lights almost, having those things. And the way we used the pyro and the lasers and the way the band was marketed and advertised, we used television extensively. I remember, if there was unsold tickets in a venue, I'd go to the radio station that, in the afternoon, and I say, it's the Triumph Circus is in town. It's Barnum and Bailey. You got to be there. It's the most fun show you'll ever see in your life. And everybody had fun at Triumph shows.
But also, the great thing about Triumph is you guys had the music to back it up.
Well, yeah. I mean, it was the bottom line was, the music was enhanced by the special effects and the lighting. It was theater. Rock was theater in our minds, and that's, standing on stage and not having a show to go with it, and playing the songs just like you recorded them. To me, that was bunk. Like, you don't need to. You can go home and listen to them that way. This is how the band wants to play them live and present them. So if you kept the essence of the song intact, but then you got to stretch out, that was just tons of fun, on a musical level. And then designing the show around the music, was so much fun to play on stage with that show. Because you'd be mesmerized by what was going on. You find yourself playing along and go, wow, that's really cool.
I know. Yeah. It's like you're a kid in a candy store.
Yeah, and I'm going, geez, if it feels and looks as good to me sitting here, imagine what it looks like, 100 feet out front. It must look spectacular.
Okay, why did you move from RCA to MCA Records for the Thunder 7 album?
We weren't happy with they used to call RCA Records Cemetery of America. And what I didn't know is they called MCA Music Cemetery of America. Yeah. So anyway, I mean, I had great friends at RCA, guys that really worked their asses off for the band and helped us and everything. But I really wanted to be on Mercury Records or Atlantic Records because they knew how to sell rock and roll, And RCA, they had Elvis and a bunch of other bands, including us. So anyway, it became that we got into this legal issue with them, and we ended up in court. And every company, the judge initially gave us, we had a probability of winning. So he said that you can go and negotiate a new deal somewhere else, but you can't sign it until there's a decision made. So we went out, and it was like, their offers were like unbelievable. And so we ended up going to court, and we lost. And so we basically had to buy RCA out of their deal, and Irving Azoff, who was president of MCA at that point, he offered the most dough, but it all went over to RCA. We ended up with nothing out of it, It was really sad, because we should have won the case. I mean, the law was on our side, except the judge, was 85 years old, and he owned an RCA TV, was best friends with David Sarnoff, whatever it was.
That's how life is.
Yeah, it's like, and you never go to court. I mean, that taught me the lesson: never, ever go to court. Even if you think you're right, it doesn't matter. So. That's a que sera. It was a crushing defeat, as Chris Berman would say in the football wrap-ups.
Yeah.
It was devastating. But, in the meantime, we'd recorded the Thunder 7 album, and it was ready to go. So it was great that everybody, all the record labels loved it, and we're ready to rock with it. And we're willing to pay us tons of money to go sign with them. However, at the end of the day, MCA was the only one that came up with enough money that we could buy our way out of RCA, because really we didn't want to stay there.
And buy your way out of RCA and then still have a little bit of money for yourselves?
No, not really. No.
Oh my gosh.
No. We started, a couple of $1 million unrecouped at MCA.
Oh man, that is heavy duty.
It was heavy duty.
So, but for that Thunder 7 record, you get to work with Eddie Kramer.
Yeah.
The legendary producer who worked with Led Zeppelin, the Beatles, and Hendrix. I mean, what is this like for you? This must be exciting for you.
Oh man, are you kidding? when I got in touch with him, we basically hired him to come and mix. He didn't do hardly any recording, but we wanted to put a name on the record, and we were ready. Me personally, because I was kind of in charge of making the records. I wanted to learn from somebody. I had pretty much gone, well, here I am, but I used Dave Thoner on the Never Surrender album, and David was good, but he was really just an engineer with a couple of good ideas, a very, very good engineer. But Eddie Kramer's a legend, right? So anyway, get Kramer to come up, and it was awesome working with him. I mean, the tricks and just the stories and everything. What
were some things that you learned, that you remember that you've taken with you in Metalworks Studios?
The real tricks, it's all in the musician and the instrument. The technology can't make it sound any better than what it really is. Like, when Gil got Kramer sitting down there, okay, how does Bonham get that drum sound? How was it? And, what did you do? And he said, I didn't do anything. We put him in a concrete room. He said the guy had legs like rock, iron. He said there were huge legs. And he had this bass drum that when you just tapped it and it exploded. He said it's the way the guy hit the drums and the power that he had. And it's like it didn't really matter what kind of drums he used. They all sounded the same because he hit them so hard. He said, so it was a question of just capturing that onto tape.
Yeah, it really comes down to style and what you bring to the table style-wise.
Yeah, you can't take a bad sounding guitar or a bad guitar player and make them sound good or play good. It comes down to how the instrument is played, and the guy, let's say every guitar player has developed their own sound. You can't develop it for them.
What were some of the highlights of the 1986 Sport of Kings tour?
That tour was big fun. I mean, that was our best show. By far, I think, we developed use of the lasers that absolutely nobody could even come close to.
And you see that in the documentary in here too.
Oh yeah, you do. There's a little bit in there.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's going to be out on DVD next year sometime too, that whole indoor show. But what we called the laser face. I don't know if you saw that tour, but the intro was one of the best parts of the show because the lights would go down and then things would start flicker and then the scrim would drop in the center of the building. The lasers would project this face that talked with this deep voice and did a 60-second intro for the band. Everybody's going, what the hell's going on? And they're looking around and we're sitting on stage going, oh boy, we're going to blow their minds when they turn around and look at us.
You had the distinction of working with Mike Klink. He produced that record, future Guns N' Roses producer.
He got Guns N' Roses because of that record.
How do you feel he shaped your sound? What was his style?
Well, Mikey was really good, but he was actually working for somebody else, a guy named Ron Nevison.
Oh, okay.
Ron started that project, and Ron disappeared halfway through it because we had to turf all the songs he brought to the project. That album was a very interesting beginning and ending. It was it was like the most bizarre set of circumstances that ever existed. Well, the record company really wanted to, MCA wanted to have hits, right? Top 40 style hits.
So they tried to get you to do songs by outside songwriters?
Yeah.
Or at least write with outside songwriters?
No, just, Irving called up and said, well, I want Ron Nevison to produce this. He's got 3 great songs that I've heard, and I think they're all hits, and they won't compromise the band. And if you don't do it, I'm going to bury you. So, not so much in those words, but in general, that's kind of the attitude it was. So we sat down, and I was dead against it, but Gil and Rick wanted to do it. And then I met with Ron, and we seemed to hit it off okay. And the songs were like, I'm going, oh, geez, these are not really what's going on. So anyway, we go to LA to record. So we do the bed tracks there, go back to Toronto, do the overdubs. I'm sitting in the studio one night watching the Canadian equivalent of MTV, and I see an artist doing one of the songs that we just recorded. And I went, just in shock. So I go to Ron, and I say, hey, what's going on? Oh yeah, I meant to tell you about that. I said, did you tell Irving that? No, it's so. Then I send a demo to a friend of mine of the bed tracks who said, I really respect his opinion. What do you think of these songs? He goes, well, this song here, I know this band Agent in Vancouver. They recorded it. It's been out for 2 years. Well, oh, there's another one. So anyway, 3 songs that we spent thousands and thousands of dollars and tons of time. We can't put on the record because why would we? They've already been stiffs by no-name artists.
Yeah.
It's like, how embarrassing is that? So we confronted Ron, and basically one day he just disappeared. He didn't show up at the studio. So Klink's still there though, right? And he's Ron's engineer.
Yeah.
So we trying to decide what to do about Klink. And I said, fire him, get rid of everybody.
Really?
We're in big trouble. I mean, now we're 3 songs short of a load for the album. So anyway, Gil and Rick talked me into keeping, and Tom Trumbo, who's a dear friend, he was the A&R guy, and he said, no, you got to keep this intact, otherwise, everything's going to freak, and we'll just tell him Klink's just as good as Nevison, whatever. Going, okay. So as time goes on, we're working away and getting but we got to write 3 more songs. So Tears in the Rain, Somebody's Out There, all got written within like a 7-day period.
Somebody's Out There was a huge hit for you guys on MTV.
Yeah, exactly, and Top 40 Radio and AOR Radio. But I produced that song, basically. It's like Klink was already gone to LA to mix at Record Plant. He disappeared with the tapes one day. And I go, the album's not finished. Like, where's Klink? So recorded those 3 songs were recorded with Metalworks engineers, and I produced them. And then they got done, so I got in a plane, go to L.A. and Kingston Record Plant, mixing with Trumbo, the record guy, and they're getting nowhere. They've been there 3 weeks, they have nothing, absolutely nothing. So anyway, we finally got reorganized and regenerated. Took a week off, and I sat with Klink. I said, "Well, you're going to mix this. It's got to be like, mixed nicely. You know, there's big pressure on us for this." So anyway, we got it done, and everything was cool. There's more. I spent enough time on this. There's way more stories.
I know. It sounds like a nightmare.
It was, and it was like the beginning of the end of the band too, because those 3 stupid songs that Nevison brought in, Rick and Gil were lobbying to sing, which ones to sing, because they're all thinking, well, this one's going to be the hit or that one's going to be the hit. And I'm sitting there telling both of them, don't listen to Nevison, because none of them are going to be hits. And Ron drove you, like, he'd go to Gil and say, "I really want you to sing this." And then go to Rick and tell him exactly the same thing on the same song.
That's amazing.
Oh, it was horrible.
Was there any sign that Rick Emmett was going to leave the band after your 1987 Surveillance tour?
From 1981 on, Rick was always making noises about, "I don't know how much longer I can do this," when there's more retrospective moments, getting near the end of a tour, when everybody's getting fried. He was always making noises about it. We talked about it, and actually, I went to New York with him. We sat with our attorney about getting him a solo deal and that kind of thing, so we could do stuff that was not part of the Triumph way of doing things, which he wanted to do. And the lawyer kind of said to him, "Well, it's like people are interested in Triumph. They really don't care about Rick Emmett.
Yeah.
So, but I can get you a deal. You're not going to get a lot of dough to make the record. I might get you $100,000 for production costs or whatever." So that was kind of cool. So Rick seemed pretty happy with that. It just never happened. The lawyer couldn't sell it to anybody.
Yeah.
So, that's we just kind of struggled through. The Surveillance album was really tough to make. Wasn't an easy project at all.
You guys had somebody from Aldo Nova come in and take Rick's place, correct, on one of the other albums down the road?
Yeah, this was like in 91, 92. Gil and I were messing around in the studio with another guitar player, doing some writing and recording just for fun.
Now, did Gil I'm sorry, I apologize, I haven't heard the record. Did Gil do all the lead vocals on that?
Yeah, Gil did all the lead vocals.
Gil's a great singer.
Oh, I love the way he sings, man. He's got such power and that blues rock edge.
Yeah.
Very few bands have 2 guys that can sing lead and 2 distinctly different voices. So you could change the whole mood of the band and the way the sound of the band.
I noticed that you guys started actually mixing it up a little more, like Follow Your Heart. You got Follow Your Heart, you got the follow. So it's like you're using the powers together there.
Yeah.
And I really like that.
That was fun to do. I mean, that was like, this is really gonna be cool. Both on recording when we were rehearsing it and then playing it live too.
The entire Triumph catalog has been reissued and remastered. How hands-on were you in the remastering process?
That was done in '94 or '95,
Okay.
I guess. Yeah. I put together all the artwork. I got all the original film back, and because when the CDs first came out on the original catalog, the record companies would put a 1-page cover in it, and that was it.
Yeah.
As they're doing now with a lot of DVDs, just junking everything.
Yeah.
Cheap Charlie. So people with CDs. There's no lyrics, no credits, no nothing. There was like advertising for country bands and stuff on the backside. So when all those rights reverted to us, that was part of our deal with MCA, that after a certain period of time, no matter what happened, we got everything back. So that was neat, but it took me almost a year to get all the artwork in place and stuff, and it was like, doing 11 albums was not easy. And with the remastering process, that's not a big deal. Remixing is a big deal, but remastering, it's here's the original tapes, and you put some fairy dust on it. And you hire Bob Ludwig or somebody like that that's a genius at it, and there you go. Because all those records had been mastered based on vinyl records. So the level that you could pound on was very low. And with CDs first coming out, you make a record, a cassette, and a CD, but all at the same level.
Yeah.
So now it's like, we can pound more level onto the disc. So if you have an old MCA issued CD, no good.
No, I know how that is.
But for a TRC, which is the label name, if you got a TRC one, yes, that's very good.
how would you describe your working relationship with such great talents as Rick Emmett and Gilmore?
We had great working relationships. It would depend on, you know, everybody, because we're all individuals. There's, you know, we all had gripes about the way each other, all of us did things. But when it came down to it, you know, the contributions that everybody made to what Triumph was, maybe at times, you know, one person put in a lot more work, maybe they didn't, whatever. All I know is we all worked really hard, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week for 12 years. And a little bit longer than that even, to make the band happen and be the best we could.
What's next for Mike Levine and Triumph?
Well, more DVDs coming.
Cool.
I mean, I've become this huge 5.1 audio, surround sound, DTS, Dolby Digital, whatever you want to call it, stuff. I'm a huge fan. It's like, it blows my mind how great it can be. And I thought, you know, it works great with live stuff. You know, I figure that's because you can recreate that live experience. However, I've just discovered in the last couple of months, we're remixing some old Triumph stuff, all the original Greatest Hits CD, and just remixing it so it's in regular stereo. I wanted to hear how it sounded, like updated, right, with today's technology. It sounds awesome. And I said, well, screw it, let's do surround on it too, and put out a DVD, hopefully in the future, with the surround sound, with the videos. So before I left town this time, the engineer that's doing it, Rich Chicky, who's awesome, he called me, he said, Mikey, you got to come by the studio before you go away. And I said, okay, come by the studio. And he played me Lay It on the Line in surround.
Yeah.
Not live, studio.
Yeah.
And it was like, honest to God, Eric, I think it was probably, now I'm a little prejudiced, but forget Triumph, forget it. It was probably the best listening experience I've ever had in my life with anything. I mean, it was just mind-blowing. So anyway, if you can afford the 5.1 system, go get it, please, because I'm telling you, you'll never go back. I mean, forget computer speakers, forget all that stuff. Get a real digital system with decent speakers, and you'll never regret it.
Mike, it's been great having you on the show today, man.
Pleasure,
you
man.
guys rock.
Yeah, man.
Keep up the good work. This is the Blairing Out with Eric Blair show with Mike Levine signing off.
The Blairing Out Show.